Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by HostGator, your one-stop shop to getting your business online. Your domain name, your website design, and even your marketing. They've got you covered. Have questions? Their team is there 24/7 via chat, phone, and email to help you. Start today for 30% off with coupon code TWiST. And by Citrix GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click on the Try It Free button, and sign up for a 30-day trial.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and I'm back from my Necker Island vacation, and I'm on fire. Today we have an amazing episode of This Week in Startups. Des Traynor is on the program. He, of course, is one of the founders of Intercom, which makes great software for startups. He talks about three very important tactical decisions you're going to need to make. The first is, what is your vision for your startup and how to create a true vision for your startup, your story, if you will. Second, he talks about making your product viral. It's not enough to want to go viral, but you have to design your product to be viral, and he goes really into that in detail, very important topic. And third, he says, hey, let's talk about your product roadmap. What features are on your roadmap, and what features are going to be used by all of your consumers all the time, as opposed to what features will be used by some of your consumers some of the time, or all of your consumers, but not very often. It's a really great talk. It's extremely tactical. If you watch this with your team, I promise you that your startup will grow 20% next month. That's right, I'm making you a guarantee. Watch this with your entire team, and your startup will grow 20% in the next 30 to 60 days. It's an amazing episode. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
So this presentation is all about things I think are really useful to think about when you're starting up, which is what all you people are doing. This is kind of like our table of contents. I'm not going to read it out. It's just the areas that we're going to discuss. The bedrock of any great technology company is vision. You really need a great vision. You can't neglect this, and it can't be something like, I just want to exit for a couple mil and quit and move to Chicago or whatever. You need to actually really want to change something. I love this piece from Alice in Wonderland where she encounters the Cheshire Cat. And Cheshire Cat sits at a crossroads in the book, which I'm sure none of you have read. And she asks the Cheshire Cat, which road do I take? He says, well, where are you going? She says, well, I don't know. And he says, well, in that case, it doesn't really matter, does it? The point being that without a vision, you'll flip-flop frequently as you're not set on what your future looks like. And vision sounds quite abstract. So to be more specific, when I ask startup what their vision is, what I want to hear is three things. I want to hear an opinion about what the future looks like. I want to hear the technological trends that you want to bet on. And lastly, I want to hear an idea of the change that you make in the world. And we'll talk to each of these pretty quickly. What does the future look like? So the future of every vertical is different, and this change is happening all the time. So for example, commerce. What's going on in e-commerce in general? Well, there's a rise in on-demand impulse purchases. Real-time anything is beating everything. Same-day local delivery is the next big thing, and there will be many significantly large businesses built doing that exact thing. There's a rise in subscription services for commerce, so you can now get things like razor blades as a service or underpants as a service. It's crazy, really. It's hard to explain to your parents, but it is true. You can actually get boxer shorts as a service. Messaging, what's going on in messaging? Well, SMS has basically been eroded to a point of near death by technologies like WhatsApp. WhatsApp showed up, and within 5 years, on a team of 30, they've managed to basically destroy the global SMS system. They now send 8 trillion a year. It's remarkable how quickly these things happen when they're right. Another thing that's changing in messaging is the email. The role of email is, a lot of people like to say it's dying. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I just think its role is changing. Email used to be how you communicate with friends and how you communicate with coworkers, but now it's actually, email is like a source of record. It's a professional, permanent way to communicate. You send somebody an email, and it's kind of an implicit, and I can use this against you in a court of law, that you don't get with something like, say, a Snapchat, or even necessarily a Slack, where they all have like, they'll, if you wish, that you can have your messages deleted every 30 days or so. In marketing, there's a shift towards marketing that's personal and personalized, so it's well targeted, and then the message is well contextualized to who's receiving it. But I'm really only saying this to say, like, you should have a good opinion about what the future of your particular area looks like. The next piece is what technological trends you're going to bet on. So technology is like the tectonic plate that we sit on. And like if you're building, say, a messaging app, you sit on trends in messaging, which in turn sit on other trends in technology. There's obvious ones. There's things like, are we going to bet on Apple Watch or not? What's its role? What's its importance? There's not so obvious ones that are future-facing. Things like the role of sensors. Benedict Evans is famous for saying every sensor that comes out basically creates a billion-dollar industry with it. There is this idea, this like crazy, stupid future idea. I looked at it as an old-school analog fish in this, by the way. It's this idea of the connected home. If this is a thing, there's going to be a lot of billion-dollar businesses that pop out of it. And you'll see other trends as well. Wearables is obviously on the rise. One interesting trend that we all kind of profit off is the shift, the cost to compute something, the cost to store something, the cost to access something in terms of bandwidth are all basically going through the floor. They all look like the euro. What that makes new things possible. So like, you can now see file sharing startups or photo storage startups that can actually do things that you just simply couldn't afford to do 10 years ago. And again, messaging itself is not insignificant. This is basically the messaging space right now. It's kind of pretty trippy, but if you're involved in any type of messaging platform, you realize you've got a lot to work with, right? It's a competitive space. So when you look at the world, the last piece that's technological trends. The third piece is like, what change are you going to make? And it's really important for you to be able to answer this for your startup, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in like, we're raising a 1 on 4, and we're going to hire these people, and these, like, it's quite inspiring from a recruiting point of view, but also like from just anyone for you to seem formidable, you have to have a fairly clear vision of what it is you're actually doing. Why do you exist other than to make money? So we know, like, we get the idea that your startup's going to profit at some stage, hopefully, but what else do you do? And when we talk about this, it's got nothing to do with like goals or targets, and it's not like number 1 or top 10 or any of that sort of stuff. It's a much more sort of human thing. It's like a factual change that you're fighting for. Like the oldest one I remember that I liked was Heroku's mission was to let developers spend their time on code. Crazy idea, but like before Heroku and startups like Heroku, you had to spend time on things like servers and things like scaling, and Heroku reduced these things to checkboxes and sliders, and as a result, people were able to start developing. GitHub, help people write better code faster. That's what the top level goal is. Intercom, we want to make internet business personal. Stripe want to increase the GDP of the internet. Instacart, to build the best way for people anywhere in the world to shop for groceries. Uber want to make transportation as reliable as running water. Their visions, and it might sound like this is fluff or this is the sort of shit you pad out your investor deck with. It really, really isn't. If you have this as your burning fire inside you, it'll actually leak out in every way. It'll be what inspires you when you're trying to recruit people. It'll be what convinces potential would-be investors or would-be partners that you're not going away, that you actually want this. And we saw a lot of good visions in the pitches here earlier, and it's really, I think it's probably the most compelling thing for me when I look at a startup is like, do I actually believe this person cares and I'm going to fight to do this?
Hey everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about HostGator. Stop thinking about the business you want to do and just start doing it. Yes, it is the first step for web hosting and domain names. Go to HostGator.com and it's a one-stop shop for everything you need. WordPress installs, drag and drop builders, easily set up custom email addresses, and do in-house design, SEO, and pay-per-click services. And it all starts at like $4 a month hosted. It's incredible with VPS and dedicated service, 24/7 support, 365 days a year. And we use it here at This Week in Startups because it's super, super affordable, especially compared to some other hosting options, which have gotten very expensive for us. And we were able to use HostGator to save literally thousands and thousands of dollars a month of my money. This is kind of important. And HostGator is saving me, Jason Calacanis, thousands of dollars a month, which I appreciate. The first 100 This Week in Startups listeners can sign up using the promo code TWiST25, and they will get a 1-year HostGator Hatchling package for just $25. Yes, that's the 1 year of HostGator Hatchling package for just $25 if you use TWiST 25, and that includes unlimited disk space, bandwidth, unlimited MySQL databases, unlimited email accounts. I mean, everything's unlimited at this place, and it's super affordable. And don't worry if you're not one of the first 100, you can still save 30% using the promo code TWiST. So you have 2 promo codes there. Try the TWiST 25, and if not, use TWiST, and you're going to get a great deal. Welcome to the This Week in Startups family, HostGator. We really appreciate the support you've been giving us and the technical team, Jacob and Jackie, as we continue to scale our business, and our expenses got very expensive, and we decided we would shop it around and see if we could find a good deal, and HostGator was an amazing deal. Again, we're saving thousands a month, and you can start for as little as, gosh, a couple dollars a month. It's a really great service. Go ahead and check out HostGator.com and thank them on Twitter. Welcome to the family, HostGator.
Most of you, hands up who's in private beta out of curiosity? Anyone? A handful. There's always a handful of private betas. Running private betas is an interesting thing. Everyone kind of defaults into it at some point. They either open it or they decide, even some features come out in private beta. They're hard. We all presume we know what we're doing, and we all just copy each other, but there's actually a lot going on in these things, and it can be easy. This bit's actually easy. Like tools like LaunchRock let you set up a page saying, I'm going to build blah, 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 and it's going to do blah. Give me your email address, and I'm going to spam the hell out of you in like 7 months' time, or you'll never hear from me again. Who knows? And that's kind of, everyone gets this bit pseudo-correct, right? They can kind of have a page with an email box, and you can click a button that stores an email. But like a small list of target users beats a big list of non-customers. And this is really the danger we were speaking about earlier, the danger of attracting attention from non-customers or using bad examples as your target customer. You have to have a fairly clear vision of who it is you actually serve and what competitive value you're bringing to them. So, and if you confuse this, you can really mess things up. For example, give away a free Apple Watch, and guess what? You're going to grow a big long list of people, and guess what those people are? They're people who want an Apple Watch. So when you hit them with your like instant groceries on demand, they don't give a shit. They're like, I want an Apple Watch, I didn't get it, I'm done, thanks, next. And yet at the same time, all you've done is really given away an Apple Watch, and you've got 8,000 dead leads, which by the way is dirty data, so you're going to convince yourself all your email targeting isn't working. It is working, it's just the wrong people. Another thing you can do is like have an incredibly vague pitch, right? And you'll see this a lot. People really like to go for the sort of the highfalutin sort of thing, like, this is, or I just invented this, by the way. This is, I try to never mock real products, but like I actually like this one after I finished up with it. It's like, this is R2, it's photography reimagined. And you're like, okay, cool. Now the problem with this is, right, you get a vague pitch, you get vague signups, right? They're not a cohesive group of people. So vague signups gets you vague feedback. So you've got like, well, I'll sign up for this. I want to sell my photos, and I click, oh, I want better filters. I need to collaborate with my art director. I'd love to export straight to Instagram. You have like a hodgepodge of different types of people trying to do different types of things. And why is that? Because you said you're reimagining photography, right? It's not clear. So you're going to get vague users, and you're going to have like basically vague feedback. And this feedback in your beta is actually your oxygen. This is what keeps you alive. It tells you whether you're going the right way or the wrong way. Feedback is basically every product launches, and it's effectively, the reason you call it beta is because it's not good enough to use. You rely on your users to get you over this hump, right? And if your users are going to give you like conflicting feedback pointing in all directions, you're in trouble. So do really be careful about who you're going to let into your special world when you're trying to form your vision and make this change. So I love this quote from Rands, because like another thing people will do, and you're lucky you have Jason here because he wouldn't tolerate this for a second, is they'll iterate and iterate and iterate but never actually get their shit together to launch, because it's a scary thing to do. I love this quote from Rands. He says, when you say iterate, I try to hear working until it's great rather than working endlessly because you don't know what done looks like. And that is honestly where a lot of people can fall into a trap. It's the scariest thing in the world to do is launch, because you're actually saying, I think this thing works. And if it doesn't work, you don't really get to say that again. You can go through a rebrand or whatever, or call it 2.0. But it's tricky. Your users won't be like, hey guys, just a quick note, saw you fixed my ticketing bug. By the way, I think you're ready to launch. Users don't say that, because like they're like, hey, well, this is a free beta. I'm not going to tell you to start charging for it anytime soon. It's not in their interest. What you end up trying to do is launch. There's usually two things that happen to trigger it. You either launch by scope or you launch by date. Launching by scope is when you are in a position to say something like, I have a very clear vision of what this product must do, and now it does it, so we're ready. My favorite, well, not my favorite, but like one of Steve Jobs' many quotes is his description of iDVD, I think it was, yeah, or maybe it was iMovie, when he walked into a meeting and there's like, all the people, interface designers, getting really in love with their pixels, loads of different mock-ups, everyone's enjoying it, and he's just like, all right, we're not going to do any of that. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the new application. It's got one window. You drag your video in, then you click the button that says burn. That's it. That's what we're going to do. And when as soon as the product could do that, he was like, that's ready to launch. The other way you exit is anyone know who this is? Lauren Michaels, host of Right. I was going to say, I'm not the American person here. I love this quote from Lauren. Someone said to him, oh yeah, well, the show will go on when it's ready. And he said, ready? The show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30 on a Saturday night. Most of you have your 11:30 on a Saturday night in 8 weeks or so. So like that's what kind of guarantees that you'll actually come out of beta. Just hope that your product's in good nick when it does. But you'll either exit by feature set or by deadline, but above all, you have to exit. Betas are also a really lossy sign-up flow. And that's one of the reasons why just be careful as you do them. You would never, ever, ever design a sign-up flow that looks like this. Customer comes to your website, signs up to be notified, verifies their email address. Many months later, clicks link in invite email, creates account, goes on trial, completes trial, signs up for real account. You're basically losing customers left, right, and center here. But that's what a beta is, which is why you don't want to spend a huge amount of time in it unless you're like a Gmail where you're giving away the world for free. What that actually looks like is something like this. I'm really enthused about the idea that you can deliver me like whatever it is, like flowers on demand. So the time I have that and the time you email me to say the app's ready, probably don't need those flowers anymore. And so I'm really not in a reciprocative mood to actually be like, oh yeah, I might actually go and buy some more roses. Especially true in impulse B2C purchases. The time your enthusiasm dissipates massively. It's slightly not as true in B2B in that if you're really solving a recurring business problem, like if you say, don't your video calls suck, we have a better video call solution, the chances, unless a hilariously better competitor came along in the meantime, the chances are that problem still exists because business problems tend to recur, whereas consumer things tend to be driven off impulse. Another thing that people get wrong is you get these emails and it's just from like do not reply at SnapCycle. This is actually a real example. I just had to mock it up because I was playing with OmniGraffle. But do not reply. Dear customer, you've been waiting for it and here it is. Your SnapCycle account is ready to be, you can now be the first of our friends to sign up. Sign up for SnapCycle now. You're receiving this email because you signed up for SnapCycle, a Snap Media product. I was like, cool. What the hell is SnapCycle? I had not a single clue because I sign up for shit all the time at Product Hunt or back in the day, Hacker News. Something bubbles to the top and I'm like, oh, this looks good. It probably is something like Photography Reimagined, but I've never found out. One thing is when you're sending out these account invites, and most of you will have a list of people, be personal, convince me that you actually care about me, remind people what the hell your product does and make it interesting, attach screenshots, do something to make it like clear that there's maybe some value here. Like I spent, I'd say like many days during like 2011, literally hand mailing beta customers to say, hey, Intercom is nearly ready. Here's what it would look like on your, I was like sending out mock-ups of screenshots of what Intercom would look there. And like the conversion rate was really, really high because they're like, when I had this problem, I came along and now you're showing what it looks like, I'm in. And that's a much better conversion rate than like just a random email, of which we all get plenty anyway. Also, and again, you're in a good place to do this. You're better off keeping quiet when you're actually in a beta. There's a lot of reasons for this, but the main ones is first impressions count. We saw a lot of first impressions earlier on, and they're not all as polished as they will be in 8 weeks. Generally speaking, you just don't want the world to see you until you've got your best foot forward. The press will only cover you when you're new, so just be careful. There is an alternate strategy to being quiet, which is to build a pipe and drip feed and drip feed and drip feed. If you're really good at that, do it, but most people are shit at it. So you're better off keeping quiet and getting a big bang launch. The press only cover typically new material. You don't get a second pop. You don't be like, hey, it's, like whatever, like SnapCycle 1.1 is out and we've just added photo uploads and oh, front page of TechCrunch with that shit. It doesn't play out that way. You get one shot at it usually. The less you say, the more people listen as well. So you probably get to email your customers once or twice or 3 times while holding their interest, but at some point they're just like, right, that dude or whatever has never said anything interesting, so I'm going to archive. I'll either literally click unsubscribe or I'll mentally unsubscribe. The end effect is the exact same. Dog fooding isn't testing. Hands up who's dog fooding their product. Everyone, I would hope, but like it's not enough testing. So the idea of dog fooding, like this idea of like, oh yeah, we're building it to solve our own needs, or we know what the problem is, and we're going to run through it all the time. You'll come out with this statement like we're dog fooding, and what you realize is that like, signing up for your app is literally the only thing you can guarantee every single customer will do. Whatever that flow is the only thing that everyone you win, everyone who hears about you after you go public, after, I mean, you launch, not you go public, fingers crossed you all go public, but the only thing that you're all guaranteed to do is whatever your sign-up flow is. And yet, so that's the one screen that matters most. Yet most product owners sign up for their account once, and they forget then, and they just kind of like, all right, that's that done. And usually when they sign up, if you're a developer, you signed up like this. You basically put probably injected your own account into your database. You didn't even play with the thing that you're supposed to have done. The risks of doing this are incredible. Your tour will go out of date if you have a tour at all. It might never occur to you to build a product tour because you never had to sign up for your product. Your docs will go out of date because you're going to try and guide people through a product that you haven't used the first 10 screens in forever. Your welcome email will probably call out things that no longer exist. Your video will call out a sign-up flow that doesn't exist. All these things will go out of date. I genuinely believe this. We still do this in Intercom today. Sign up for your product every week. It's the only way to detect these things going wrong. And obviously, like, you might think I've got automated unit tests that'll do this for me. It is not the same thing. You actually have to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who actually is trying to use your product for the first time, and they know nothing about the world. They haven't been reading your blog. They haven't been involved in your financing. They're just like, oh, this sounds cool. I'd like to use this. And that's all they know about your product. Do they have enough context to complete that and become a happy customer? As they say, to actually eat dog food, you have to open a new tin every single day. So another thing to think about is who your competitors are, because we talked a little bit about competitors earlier, but who your real competitors are as opposed to who is in the same category on Crunchbase is a very different question, right? Real competitors, it depends what you're competing for. Like, if you're building a help desk solution, you might be dropped into the same category as Zendesk, but it's probably not credible that someone's going to be on a coin toss between you and Zendesk. There's a whole heap of differences, chances are, between a startup coming out of this incubator and Zendesk. Similarly, if you're building something like an advertising platform, they're not like, oh, it's Google Ads or these guys. It's not that at all. It's always going to be like more local and more specific than that. One interesting thing I'd like to ask is like your real competitors, like when, for example, can anyone just throw out a guess, when do flowers compete with chocolates? Sorry, say again?
I said Valentine's.
Valentine's Day is a great one. An apology is a great one. Yeah, Mother's Day, right? Now, like here we have, like, if you like, the chocolatier industry against, I guess, like the gardening industry of sorts, right? And like they're not in the same thing, but there's a lot of times when you're making this A/B choice, and yet you're never going to find anyone at Cadbury's thinking our biggest competition is red roses. Similarly, when does Twitter compete with games like Monument Valley? Probably when you've got like 20 minutes to spare on a BART journey, or probably 4 minutes maybe is more accurate. But your competitors are like, when does, what really competes with TripAdvisor? Like, you're looking for a hotel in a new city, like there are lots of competitors, and they're not going to be things like Expedia. They're often going to be like, conversations with real people. But it's interesting to think about this. You have direct, secondary, and indirect competitors, and you're competing based on the job the customer is trying to do, not the category. When you're out to apologize, you're not thinking, I'm looking to make an apology in the chocolate industry. You're not. You're looking to make an apology, and there are lots of mediums to do it. So your direct competitors do the same job in the exact same way. So McDonald's compete with Burger King head on, right? They do the exact same job. Now you could argue Burger King are trying to go for a slightly maybe more like a meat authentic or maybe barbecue or whatever angle, but for the most part, it's just junk food, right? Like secondary is something like Skype competing with business class travel. If Skype could deliver a really, really high quality experience that would be just like me being here, I wouldn't be here. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But video calling is competitive with business class travel because they are doing the same job. It's just one of them is not good enough yet. And then you've got like indirect competitors, which they do conflicting jobs. So you've got things like, say, McDonald's versus Weight Watchers, or McDonald's versus health food, or versus Whole Foods or something like that, where they, I want to do one, but I also want to do the other, and I can't do both. So you're making me pick, even though they're not even in the same category doing the same job.
Just think about all the money we spend on meetings, going to them, transportation, the time out of the office, the time to and from. It's an incredible amount of money. And let me tell you something, most meetings can take place over GoToMeeting. Why? Because GoToMeeting has flawless HD. It has flawless screen sharing. The meetings start on time. It works on any platform, mobile, desktop, etc. I love the product. I use the product every day. And here's how it goes when I use it. My chief of staff will tell people, hey, have a great headset. Hey, have multiple people on headsets. Hey, use the voice over IP. It's amazing. Hey, get this 1080p camera or just use the one that comes with your Mac. We've optimized to do these meetings perfectly and on time. And my life is so efficient because of GoToMeeting. I've been using GoToMeeting for a decade. They've been a sponsor and partner on this program for a couple of years, probably 4 out of the 5 or 6 years we've been doing this. Why? Because it's easy for me to read the ad. These other people who read the ad, they may not even use the product the way I use it. I use it daily, 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm looking at the copy. I covered everything. I mean, just go to GoToMeeting today, try it free, GoToMeeting.com, you all know that, and get a free 30-day trial. I want you to try it. There is nothing to lose. It's an amazing product. Like I said, I use it all the time. And one of my favorite features, I can always give you the secret features. Hey, you can record the session, which is great to have that recording. Or there's a chat room built into it. So I always tell people, hey, keep the chat room open. So while you're pitching me, I'm going to type the questions. I literally type the questions in the chat room. Why? Because I don't have to interrupt the presenter. I just queue them up. And I say, answer these whenever you want. Think about that. If a person has that question answered later in their presentation to me, I just say, I'm going to put my questions in there. You can answer them at any time. You don't have to answer them in real time. So if I write a question like, how do you plan on making money? They don't have to stop the presentation and say, oh, I'm going to get to that. Please wait. No, they just keep talking. So that's my little hacks. I have these little hacks. And the chat room is one of them. Recording is another. Having multiple people on them at the same time. So I'll be in a conference room with 2 people, both on GoToMeeting, both on headsets, and on the television set on a 3rd computer, so that we have 3 swings at the bat. Multiple people typing, multiple people on perfect clarity. Anyway, the product is fantastic. It's well worth the money. It's very affordable. So everybody thank at Citrix at GoToMeeting for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. Let's get back to the program. I'm going to talk for 2 hours about GoToMeeting. I love the product.
So it's just interesting to think about who you're actually really competing with when you go to market. Another interesting thing that falls out of this is, like, if people are supposed to switch to your product from an existing product, and by the way, they always are, because at the very least you're competing for their time, if not their money, if not their advertising budget, or like their normal SMS provider or whatever. There's 4 forces at play that are interesting to talk about. So this switch here is like a hard thing to make, because most people here, they overvalue where they are today and they undervalue what it is that you have to offer them. But the 4 forces, and this is a really key point for you to think about how they apply to your product. Here's what the customer is currently doing, the existing solution. And here's you, and you want them over here. There are 2 forces that will work in your favor, and there are 2 forces that will work against you. So this could be a conference they currently sponsor and a conference they're going to sponsor. This could be a photo app they currently use and one that they're thinking about using, whatever. The first one is, what's wrong with their current world? What's pushing them away? Why am I even shopping, right? So let's say I'm considering switching from, like, I don't know, like from Outlook to Mailbox. What's wrong with Outlook? Like, as in, why am I looking to get away? Does search suck? Is it too slow or whatever? What's attracting me to the new place? So what does this have that I don't currently have, but it sounds exciting? And then the forces below the line are what prevent this switch from happening, right? We've got, for a start, what's keeping me where I am today? And usually this is some form of habit. It's like I've got all my saved searches set up, or I know how this workflow works, or I've got it installed on all my different machines and all my mail clients are all configured to work with it, or whatever, right? There's usually something keeping you there. And then, like, what's the fear of change? So if I do switch, why is this tough? Like, I don't, the classic ones that a lot of you will face is like, I don't know if I want to trust you with my advertising budget. I don't know if I want to trust you with my holiday plans. Because it's just, you're like just, a couple of girls and guys in a shed and somewhere in San Francisco, and, I'm dealing with Google, and, they have like, 80,000 people, and like, it's, there's always going to be risks here. So your job is to get this switch to happen. If the energy above the line is greater than the energy below the line, you win. Unless that's true, you don't. And how do you do this? Well, you want to maximize problems with the current product. Tell them why their current solution is shit. Tell them what's great about yours. Ensure them they have no risks if they do it. Make it easy to reverse, all that stuff. Make it easy to get started. And remind them how outdated and analog their habits are. Or at the very least, make sure that they know that their habits are also available in your product just as easily. So, yeah, maximize the top forces, minimize the bottom ones. Does anyone remember this campaign? I'm a Mac, I'm a PC. This did it really, really well because they presented like, they presented the PC as being like old, outdated, crap, slow, riddled with malware, all the stuff that was pushing people away from the PC. They presented the Mac as being young and hip and cool and beautiful and all this sort of stuff. And then they did other things. They told you things like, guess what? Microsoft Office works in the Mac. So that's they're attacking the habit for us. They're like, oh, well, will all my business stuff work there? Absolutely it will. And then they're preventing you with anxiety, such as, oh, I hear Macs are expensive. No, they're not. They're just as cheap as Dells. And so they've come out of all four, and lo and behold, it was a pretty successful campaign, which is why we saw so many of them. The last piece on this is the 9x effect. So there's a lot of data that says this. People overvalue where they currently are in terms of raw performance 3 times over. And companies overvalue what they build 3 times over. So you can see how this is a problem. If this new solution is marginally better than the old solution, that's not enough, because this, when you blow it up by 3, is a big happy customer thing. And by the way, it's not that they think it's great, it's just that they think, I've already got it, I've already spent it, I made the decision to use this, so I'm going to have to be going back on my own social credit to say that this isn't good enough. Similarly, like, founders typically come in and are like, why on earth would you use that thing? It's so terrible. Our thing is amazing, but you have this sort of blind love, like a parent for a child. Like, it's like, no matter what it does, I don't care if it just deletes all your advertising budget. It's cool, and that sort of that hesitancy will be there as well. But that's what makes it hard. This is kind of roughly the origin of the myth. I say it's a myth, but it's probably mostly true, that your product should be like 10x better to actually really get a switch. So, if you need viral, you have to design viral. You can't bake it in afterwards. There is no go viral button, sadly, much as every media agency will go shopping hoping that there is. What this means is, if you build it in, what it looks like is, from the very moment I looked at sign up all the way through to engagement, and I thought every single step along the way, how can actions provoke reactions? And if you bolt it on, it's sticking a shitload of like buttons onto an app where they make no sense and get no engagement. And we see plenty of the latter, sadly, and maybe not enough of the former. Your app basically works something like this, no matter what it does effectively. Someone comes to your site, they log in, they use your product, they do something worth sharing, hopefully, and they share. And then it appears in a social network, friends see it, friends click the link, and the cycle repeats. That's the very, very high level viral flow. You can get really specific about this, but the key points here are something worth sharing, a user logging in, and the amount of users you have. And what that maps out to, or nets out to, is your viral factor, right? So here's how you calculate viral. And this will be important to you right after you launch, because if you want to make the claim that you're viral, most people will just throw this right back at you and say, show me. And what they want to see is, for any given user, what % of users do something worth sharing, how many times, how many users does a share refer, and what % of those users are in a position to themselves either sign up or do something worth sharing. When you multiply these 4 numbers out, you'll get a score. If it's above 1, you don't need to listen to this talk anymore, go straight down to Menlo Park. If it's below 1, we'll go on. To improve your virality, although that says vitality, possibly true as well, you focus on the 3 green ratios. So here you have publishing daily authenticated users, and that means people in your product doing things, basically. You've got your daily authenticated users, that's people in your product, but not necessarily doing things. You've got monthly authenticated users, that's people who are in your product every month or so. And then you've got your uniques. This is people visiting your product page of sorts, right? Interacting from a distance. If from an e-commerce store, they could be like browsing, but not necessarily committing or signing in. The way you increase each of these ratios is different. To get all your unique monthly users to be in from the very start, you want to make sure that Users can sign in any way they want. They should be able to sign in through Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. Absolutely any platform possible, let them in that way. The reason you do this is because if I'm signed into Facebook and I go to your app, guess what? I'm now signed into your app. Done. Next problem, right? You just solved that. You reduce that to 100%. That conversion is no longer a problem for you. That's why, even though as developers it annoys us, but that's why the argument is for using social sign-in. It's not the fear of you can augment an outsourced sign-in system. You can use Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and then have step 2 if you wish, be like, and give us some extra information that we need for our business. But this is a huge advantage. Keep them signed in for as long as you think wise. Again, if you're doing this through a third party such as Facebook, that's not an issue. And then promote social sign. This is like where Facebook kind of have you to some degree compromised, because they can say basically, look, you're much better off having your users sign up through Facebook than they are through your rickety old system that you're going to build over here. Why? Because then they'll never have to use it and they'll always be signed up for you. That's why they argue you should promote social sign-in above your own system, and it's really hard to argue with them. To improve monthly authenticated to daily authenticated, this is all about triggers and notifications, and it's all about retention ultimately. It's about how can we have people who use our product, but they're not using it enough. So what do we have? Well, you can send out push notifications, you can send out emails, you can send out reminders, but you need to basically be working out a way to communicate with users and motivate them to return. Don't tell them to return because they're just going to archive that email, but give them a reason to return. Have you ever received the horrible, scariest email in the world? You wake up really, really hungover, and your inbox, you have been tagged in a photo on Facebook. There's a very good reason why the photo isn't in that email, because then you would not return to Facebook. Your first thing you're going to do is get straight in there, probably untag yourself no matter what, but secondly, you want to see the photo to make sure, so you know how bad things are. Solve the cost benefit analysis of this. So make it easy to do these things that give rewards. And lastly, make sure user actions affect each other. So people like LinkedIn are really, really good at this. Basically no matter what I do on LinkedIn, the chances are all my contacts get told about it. So Des is searching for whatever. Or Des endorsed Jason for blogging, and then all of my contacts will know that, all of Jason's contacts will know that. That's just, just literally many, many emails are sent, and they're all gonna be like, no, maybe I should endorse someone for blogging. And then a whole tidal wave of new usage comes along. This is what we call lightweight actions. So heavyweight actions and lightweight actions is kind of a new slightly new term that people use in terms of interaction with products. A lightweight action is something that's basically a click, a tap, a swipe, a button. There's no content creation or anything like that necessary. And lightweight actions are kind of like the difference between, say swiping on Tinder versus rating and communicating on Tinder, right? It's just something that's easy to do versus something that's hard to do. Like button itself is a lightweight action, because the alternative is write a message that says, well, you think this is a poetic update. Like, next. You can do many more likes than you can write messages, and those many more likes, what are they going to do? Trigger off a load of notifications and emails and all that sort of stuff, which keeps the usage flowing. LinkedIn did this really well. They didn't move, but they offered an alternative to these heavyweight endorsements where you have to write a testimonial as to why somebody is great. And they said, why don't you just click this button and it's going to endorse this person for 5 skills. Doesn't matter if they have them. That is literally a different concern from a different part of LinkedIn, but from their point of view, we've built an easy way to say that Des says that Brian is good at interaction design. And lastly, to improve daily active users to publishing daily active users, this is all about your lightweight shareable actions. So for example, anything that happens in your product, you should always think about, is there a repercussion of this that somebody else would be interested in? And if so, how do we make sure that they know? This is mostly true in networks, but it's not just true in networks. There are other areas. For example, you ever been to a travel website where it says the last booking of this hotel was 7 minutes ago or whatever? All of those things are just actions that will just provoke reactions. So whether it's if you think of Spotify, it's listens, faves, playlists, etc. You can see it just all packs up over here. But it's what makes your product so much more present than it would be otherwise. And that is basically the core of what virality is. If you're a marketplace, and there are a couple within the group, you should actually understand there's a few dynamics that are kind of well understood about marketplaces. And a lot of people just jump straight into building a marketplace app without necessarily understanding this. A marketplace typically is a large subsidized user base and a smaller profitable user base. Basically, these people pay for software that these people use and enjoy. That's the basics of marketplaces. So what you should understand is that there are positive and negative network effects. People can repel people and people can attract people. And then these can happen same side or cross side. So for example, if you take something like Twitter, the more users on Twitter, the more users on Twitter. So if everyone's using Twitter, everyone else will start using Twitter. That's a positive same side network effect. And then the more people on Twitter, the more advertisers on Twitter. So that's a cross side positive. The more advertisers on Twitter, the less advertisers on Twitter. If everyone's there, the party's over, the CPMs get ridiculous, and it's just no longer any fun. And then lastly, the more advertisers, the less users. That's a negative cross side effect. Because if the thing turns into an ad city where it's just like packed out with all this garbage that you don't want to see, you'll start losing the customers. This is the thesis anyway. But in theory, like there will come a tipping point. Like the pressure to monetize will provoke things, and it will create this big whole opening called "We're like Twitter, but with like less ads or whatever, or with less privacy concerns." So that's the interesting thing that you should understand about marketplaces. You can like quantify and measure all of these things. What you want here, and like when you think of like something like Uber, more people using Uber, more cab drivers tell more cab drivers are doing well, more passengers, more here, and then basically the more cars are on the road, the quicker the car time. So you get 4 all positive, same side and cross side network effect. That is what a really, really successful marketplace is about. Things like Instacart and a few others have that trait too, and that's literally why we talk about them as unicorns. One thing you should consider is pricing in a two-sided market. The standard supply and demand theory says that as price gets cheaper, demand should get higher, and in practice, no supply and demand curve looks like that across a price axis. There's this thing called the penny gap, and this is an important thing to think about because it means that inevitably, one side of this has to be fully free. You can't profit off both sides easily. You can maybe do it at a tune like 99 cents or so, but it's really, really hard to do. In practice, the very second you start charging, you lose maybe 90%. And you'll see this, there have been failed social networks that have tried basically how can we monetize one side of this, and turns out, both sides, and it turns out you can't, is the short answer. Most people aren't willing to pay. One exception you might think is WhatsApp, but WhatsApp isn't a marketplace. There's no advertiser third party in that. They're all just paying to use the thing, and it's 99 cents a effing year, so it's not really a significant thing. Identifying winner-takes-all markets and avoiding them is important. If you're in a winner-takes-all market and the winner's already taken all of it, you basically want to pivot because it's really, really hard. Winner-takes-all market has three sort of tests. One is there a large cost to either side of the marketplace for using more than one product? So, is there a large cost for, say, using more than one driving or like more than one of the transportation apps? No, there's not. For either side, driver or passenger can both use Uber, Lyft, whatever, no problem. Are there strong positive network effects? Yes, there are. Is there room for differentiation by specific features? So can you make your product stand out, or is there some sort of protocol that basically means you can't innovate? So if you think of areas where there's no innovation, like I think of like VGA ports on monitors. I think of like notifying people by email. There's just like there's just a standard way to do a lot of things that you just can't go above and beyond on. If that is the case, then basically if you get 2 yeses and a no here, you should get the hell out of that market unless you're basically already the winner. You define your roadmap, and then your roadmap will define you. So you really only get one shot at it. That's the trade-off here. To think, and this is the only piece of old content I'll cover here. It's important for all of you to be able to answer this question. What features are being used by who and how? So this is like product management 101, but you have like some of the people, some of the time, all of the people, all of the time. And if you take, say, a standard product like project management tool, Basecamp, Asana, Trello, something like that, what are all the people spending all of the time doing? Well, it's usually posting messages, getting replies, reading replies, creating projects, adding and completing tasks. It's those standard sort of tasks, right? If you look here in this case, we've got like time tracking, which is some people are using it all the time, but not everyone. So you would say in this case that time tracking has an adoption problem. It's a feature in the product that not everyone's using. You want to find out why, because you put a lot of time into building that, and it turns out most of your customers, or at least half of them, or whatever this measure is, are yet to adopt it. So a good way to think about this is this. Your core product is high and to the right here. and it's what everyone's spending all your time doing. And that's where, the better you get up here, any improvement you make in this star area up here, everyone experiences every single day. This would be like Instagram improving their photo upload, or this would be like Twitter improving their writing a tweet dialogue. Everyone gets that every single second. If you do work here, only a small amount of people get it. Some of them will get it most of the time. But the reason I call these out as danger zones is that usually if you have something like this, what it means is you've built features to satisfy a couple of users, but not all. And that's a problem, because you're going to tiptoe towards a sort of a hodgepodge product where everyone has a slightly different experience of it, because some people do use the advertising creator and some people don't, and some people do use the video feature but most people don't, and you can't get any core traction with that sort of product. It'll become too wide, miles wide and inches deep with a load of pseudo users, so it's risky. A sort of an addendum point that Jason made to this in a blog post was that this also kind of gives you an indication of where you allocate your time, how your roadmap should be broken down. It's interesting to think, but like, you don't want to spend time here. Like, this is like, hey guys, I've been working on Dribble and Photoshop for the last 4 hours and I've got a new reset password dialogue. It's like, great, that's not a valuable thing to invest time into. So when you think of your roadmap and when you go back to your teams, it's really, it's gonna give you a lot of clarity if you can map everything you're doing to one of these things. You're either improving a feature, in which case you should measure that. Are you actually improving it? And that measure will look like an increase in customer satisfaction, however you choose to measure that. You're going to try and get more people to use a feature. So that's, if you have a lot of people who've yet to start using it, you want to get them up and running. Get people to use a feature more. That's an increase in frequency. So if it was something like, messages sent per day, and the current thing is 0.5, you're looking to get that up to like 2. But it doesn't mean you're getting any new users of that feature. It just means the people who are using it more. And then lastly, and this should be the exception, and the reason this is the exception is because you don't want to go miles wide and inches deep. So once you hit traction, this should be a rare thing to do. Think of how old Instagram is. It's a few years old. Think of how much the core offering has changed. It hasn't. Why? Because they've got great traction. It's a really polished, well-rounded product where most people use everything. And if you do add a new feature supporting new workflow, you should be able to see an increase in customers, which might be tracked as an increase in revenue. But at the end of the day, you're putting a lot of R&D time into this. You should see it back somehow. So the quick way I summarize that is basically like, you either get more people using it or you get people using it more. But it shouldn't be acceptable for things to hover around here. Last 2 points is how to launch a new feature. So a lot of you are going to do this shortly after, despite what I just said. And that's cool. It is important. There'll be some big, bullet hole size openings in your product where it's like, of course you need to be able to merge accounts or whatever. So when you decide to do this, you have this expectation that it's going to be a smash hit. Why? Because you just built a product and that was a smash hit. So obviously you can't put a foot wrong. That's where you're wrong. New features usually flop, and you have to fight hard against that to get them actually used. So I love that this quote is actually on Microsoft.com's press page as a boast. In a recent customer survey, we asked features what they wanted from Microsoft Office. More than 90% asked for a feature that was already in Microsoft Office. For some reason, they're proud of that. And but that speaks to the idea that there's a huge discoverability problem here. In that obviously they rolled out a load of this new stuff and people just did not realize it was there somehow, right? And this happens all the time, but that's a hilarious example, kind of somewhat unique to Microsoft and how they roll out features, but we all do it in different ways. There's a few things you should always bear in mind when you're pitching a new feature. One of them is sell what it can do, not what it is. So a lot of people will say, we've launched a merge button that will put 2 accounts together. That's actually not interesting. It's like we've solved the problem where, and you have to speak to the customer in the language of what they specifically heard for. You can't break it down and we've built a new feature that does. It's not that. It's you can now what? What can you now do that you couldn't do before? Selling what you can now do is really interesting. Selling what it does, not so interesting. Selling what it is, no one gives a shit, right? It's really important to pitch it that way. What can you do now that you could not do before? That's what a new feature is. It's you extending capability, a superpower, to your customers. Another one is promote it in context. So if I check my email right now, I guarantee you someone's mailing me about, we've just built a new invoice editor. And I'm like, I literally don't care. I'm just finishing a presentation, thanks. When I log into your tool and you're telling me, hey, you can now edit your invoices, I'm like, oh, sweet, I've been waiting for that feature. There's just a fundamentally different thing to talking to people in context versus interrupting them out of context to tell them about something that they only care about in a specific context. It's as simple as that. Pointing out a new feature when I'm in a product, great. Mailing me about a new feature that I can only use when I'm in a product, not so great. Unless it's like an earth-shaking announcement, like, hey, our Android app is finally ready and you asked for it specifically. It's like, oh, well, okay, I'll give that a try. But when you're talking in context in a product, you have much more permission to point things out and be more frequent in your communication because you're in the right place. It's like the difference between a hotel concierge pointing out things in the lobby when you're in the lobby versus ringing you and being like, you won't believe what we've got in the lobby. No one cares, Similarly, if you do something like a tooltip or a sort of a glossy sort of promo inside your product, that's great. That's how today's customers will hear about this feature. They'll be like, oh, look, we have a new reports feature, awesome. But then someone signs up in a week's time and this is gone because you're done with your announcement. How do they know about it? Because it's just one thing there. So when you add new important features, you have to think, it's great that you can announce them to your current customers, but you also have to think about the discoverability of them for future customers, because future customers didn't get your email, they didn't read your tweet, they didn't read your blog post, but they're still going to sign up in a few weeks. And you don't want to be the people boasting that 90% of what customers want is already in your product. Right? That is not a good place to be. Also, following up on engagement is really important. Engagement is like such a key thing for when you want traction, because it's what helps you keep your product small but really impactful. Talk to customers who are using your product. So like, hey, I know you're using reports, how can we make this better for you? And similarly, hey, I know you're a loyal customer and all that, but you're not using reports. I'm wondering what's stopping you from using reports. Let me know. I'll build the features. I'll build an importer. Is it your other tool? Is it the fact that you want a PDF? Let me know and I will get you using that feature. Get more people using a feature or get people using it more. Ultimately, it's really good to get the feedback from here and channel it to these people. Because it's like, that way you can do things like, lots of people use our reporting tool to do cash flow expensing or whatever. And you tell the other people who aren't using it, they're like, oh shit, I didn't realize you could do that. That's cool. And the last piece is, it's a lot of you where you are in your products today, you've baked a lot of assumptions in, and that's a good thing. You kind of need to, because you can't revisit things all the time. So you're just going to say, like, I'm just going to assume that it's the thing that people want, whatever it is, on demand or something. I'm very conscious not to give away anyone's startups here. Startups will move fast. So, like, in not so many weeks' time, you're all going to launch, and then it's going to be like a whirlwind. It'll be breakneck speed. It'll be the sort of thing where you come back to your office one day and you're like, where's my desk gone? Why aren't we using Asana anymore? Who's this guy? What's going on? And why are we changing the office? And that's basically the decision speed you'll move at, and that's what it feels like. It's crazy, but it's necessary for you to actually make progress. And what progress looks like typically in startups is actually decisions. And so here's like a classic, as time goes by, you hit important decisions and you make a call. And the thing is, you don't know if it's the right call or the wrong call. If you're still alive, it was probably the right call, but you don't know. And you'll just make decision, and you'll explore a couple and you'll decide. And it's just an inevitable flurry of decisions. The biggest impactful thing you do as founders is make decisions about what you think is the right thing for your product, for the future, for your market, for your company, for your team. And you pick a path. And of course, when people read the story back, or even when you think back on how you got here so far, you actually delete all of the alternative roads. And when the story is told, it looks like a pretty linear path to success. People can sort of say, and like this is like, even if you look at something like The Social Network, the movie, like they just tell you this A to Z, it all just worked out. Of course it did. How couldn't it have? It was such an obvious idea all along. But you don't realize all the different trade-offs that were made. Like Uber looks like it was inevitable today, but it wasn't inevitable when they were making decisions about should we do Uber X or should we do limousines or when should we add, all of these decisions had to be made and made correctly. The problem is, because we think this is what our pasts look like, because we have this like beautiful sense of forget, if you like, we assume this is what the future looks like. So we build roadmaps that make the same sort of thing. It's like, oh, well, I guess in the future I'm not going to make mistakes anymore, just like I didn't in the past. So you sort of plan like this, and you give yourself no buffer for correcting any sort of mistakes you made. So you build a feature, and you move on. But like, there's no gap here where it's like, let's go back and check if that was a good idea, because if it wasn't, we should get rid of it. And the thing is, I'm sorry for the state of this slide, it's starting to get ugly, you're getting smarter every step of the way. You know much more about your team, your capabilities, your technologies. You know much more about your target market, your customers. So you're much smarter today than you were when you made this call. So you get to ask yourself questions like, given that I'm much smarter now, is that still the right decision? When you get new information, you can change your opinion, and you should act on that change. And what that looks like is asking yourself questions like, if you knew then what you know now, would you still have built that feature? Would you still have shipped that integration, chose that architecture, designed that screen, chose that logo, picked that name, picked that co-founder, hired that engineer? These are all decisions that are on your conscience, and they're still there. We talk about things like, you know, hindsight being 20/20 a lot, and it is like 20/20. You can look back with a lot more clarity because you're kind of smarter. And you know, the last point I'd leave you with is mistakes that you know about in your companies or your products today. If you know about them and you're not fixing them, then you're just making them every single day. And that's all I had. The next slide will have the last piece of information which you're all going to want. Let this guy finish spinning. If you want the slides for this presentation, you can have them. It's just des-slides@intercom.io. I'm Des Traynor on Twitter. This is the product Intercom. I hope all of you are using it. This is our blog, and a lot of the best thoughts I have on product are also in a book. You can get it at intercom.io/PM book. It's free and it's for all of you to have, and I hope this was useful. Thanks so much.